gives them a history.
Yeah.
And you know how it's going to impact what's going on in present day. It gives you a lot more depth, I think.
And I mean, it's kind of got conflict baked in because
Mm-hmm.
they probably didn't break up under the best of circumstances, or
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
life pulled them apart or people pulled them apart, so you've already
Yeah.
got that conflict baked in.
Half
Yeah.
your writing is done. Your plotting is well on the way if you do
Yeah.
this one.
Welcome to the Wish I'd Known Then podcast, where we focus on how authors found success, looking at strategies that have taken them to the top of the bestseller charts, as well as what they've learned from their mistakes. Because being an indie author is more than knowing the latest marketing trend. It's about being innovative and creative and learning from your mistakes.
Welcome to the Wish I'd Known Then podcast. I'm Sarah Rosette.
And I'm Jamie Albright. And this week on the show, we are doing part 2 of our Tropes episode.
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
So part 1 came out in 2023, and we'll put a link to that in the show notes if you want to go back and listen to it. But if you missed it, we surveyed a bunch of writers who'd been on the podcast before and asked them what their favorite trope was, why they liked it, and some examples of where they had seen it used in books, movies, TV shows, something like that they would recommend. If you're interested in that, you go check the examples out.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
we're going to be talking about that today.
Yep. So what's been going on with you?
I've actually been doing some writing. I'm getting back in the groove.
That's awesome.
I'm feeling pretty good about it. My new motto is words first, either editing, writing, or something like that. Do the words first and then do email or, whatever.
That's great.
Admin. Yeah. So I am getting some stuff done. I think it's going to be good. And I'm making my list of things I want to do this year. And the first thing I did was I put on there things I'm taking off my plate. So,
well, that's good.
I only had 2 things to take off my plate, but I figured that's better than nothing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That is. That's great.
Yeah. What about you?
Not a whole lot. I've been still recovering from my surgery. I've had some consulting calls and I had to put them off for 2 days. Like it was the 3rd day. I had 3 of them and I felt so bad, but I should have just said for 2 weeks, I'm not going to do anything. But I was like, 2 weeks, I'm going to be fine. I think I'm still a little run down. And so I just felt terrible. And then I had this weird allergic reaction. It was bizarre. Couldn't open my eyes. It was weird. I know. And but I've done those. And then I've been taking InstaLove University. It's a little course that Hope Ford put together, and it's so good. Like, even if you're not going to write InstaLove, it's about writing shorts. And we can put the link because I think it's open until the end of the month. And, but it's about writing shorts and on Amazon. And I didn't even know this. And I have a novella out, and it's in one of these categories, and I had no idea because you can't pick the category. Amazon puts it in there, but 1 hour reads, 90-minute reads, 2-hour reads. Well, mine is in the 2-hour read. Anyway, they were talking about it on Clubhouse, and I was like, you know what? And this is my plan. My readers deserve something from me. And if I can write a short, I mean, there are people doing really well in this and making money and stuff. And that would be great, but that's not why I'm doing it necessarily. I just need to be able to complete something and get it out. And so doing maybe 3 shorts that lead into a longer book is my plan. Yeah. So I've been doing this course. It's so good. It just gives you just things to think about that you don't think about, like when writing short and stuff. And I would say I'm not great at writing short, but the fact is I have 2 20,000 word novellas, and those novellas are probably tighter than anything I've written. I mean, there's no wasted words or anything. And so maybe I'm okay at it. So we'll see what happens.
And I think writing short really, it tests your skills, and you have to be really good at it, especially like with a mystery, because you've got to be able to get everything in there if you're doing a full blown mystery. But I think that's really good. I think that's smart.
I've never written Insta Love, so that's
Yeah.
different. And I've been reading a few, and they're so like I'm reading the ones that are more like mine. Would be, funny and Kat Baxter I'm reading, and it's so funny. Big, bearded, and brilliant
Funny.
mountain men are real popular in
shorts
in these shorts. Yeah. So, but anyway, so that's what I've been doing and working on my plan. So now I have a plan. Now I have to get 3 books. I mean, at least the idea of the plot and how they funnel back into the longer
your world. Yeah.
In my world.
Well, when I did those letters, I really enjoyed those. And I think they would be like short. I mean, they're shorter. They're much shorter than the novel or novella. And it was a really nice change of pace.
Yeah.
It was stressful at times because I was like, I don't know how to do this. Yeah. But it is a nice change of pace, I think.
Yeah. And, I mean, just, my number one activator, I want to finish something. I want to get something
out.
done. And that's the hardest part about writing books is it takes a long time to write a book. And it does for me. And then I get sidetracked and then I get, y'all know the story. But anyway, so that's what's been going on with me this week.
Okay. Well, that made me remember that I also had a podcast to talk about, a new one, Ink and Magic. Have you heard of this? It's Inez Johnson and Elle Penelope are doing a podcast.
Yes.
So I've listened to a couple of episodes and it's really good. It's a lot of craft. So anyway, so I'll put a link to that in the show notes too.
Yes, do, because I want to listen to it.
Yeah. So that's a new writer podcast I thought people might be interested in. So wanted to mention that. Yeah. So let's see. We don't have any new supporters this week, but we really appreciate the supporters we have.
Yes, we do.
And if you've gotten value from the podcast and you want to support us, we would greatly appreciate it. You can just go to Wish I'd Known Then podcast/support and find the link there.
All right, great. So you want to jump in and start us off talking about the second part of the trope?
Yeah. Let's talk about tropes. So we talked about our favorite tropes last time. So we're not going to rehash all that. But I was thinking, do you have any tropes that you avoid in your writing?
Time travel, because my brain will not hold it.
There's a lot of rules.
I have spatial issues. So I love to read it. Outlander, my favorite book ever. And Elizabeth O'Rourke has a parallel, and I can't think of the second book. But anyway, those books are great, and they're time travel, but they're almost like a parallel timeline. It's really cool. I can't. There's no way in God's green earth that I would be able to keep that straight in my head. So I avoid that.
Yeah. I used to think that if I ever wrote anything besides mystery, I would do a time travel, because it does sound appealing to me. But what I did was I wrote the historical. So that way I'm just all in the past and I don't have to worry about going back and forth. I think mine would be Amnesia. I try not to write about amnesia. And that's really funny because one of these responses is about amnesia. So it'll be interesting to see the contrast. But for me, I feel like that's really hard to pull off. And I feel like it's done a lot. That's the thing that the plot twist turns on, is that so-and-so can't remember anything that happened. So I usually try not to use that. Sometimes I do have people in comas, though, a lot. Sometimes you have to have something happen and you don't. Sometimes I'm like, I don't really want anyone else to die. So they're just going to go in a coma for a while. Then they'll recover at the end.
Temporarily incapacitated.
That's right. Or they have to go out of town on a long trip and not be able to reach.
I've killed my quota.
That's right.
Yeah.
There's only, although cozies do have a high body count. It's very funny.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway.
That's true. Yeah. I think that's probably it for me. I used to say I hated like Secret Baby or Surprise Baby. And then I realized I'd written at least one.
That's true.
After the fact. Yeah.
It was such a good, so folded in there so well, you didn't even realize it.
I forgot. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm
But
sure we have
yeah.
all written the things that we've said we wouldn't. So
yeah, I mean,
yeah.
if you haven't, you probably haven't been doing this very long.
All right. Well, here, how about I'll start us off
Okay.
with, okay, so first we have Joe Lallo, and he writes science fiction and fantasy. So his favorite trope is, he says, I very much enjoy when a character is seemingly inept or at least harmless and often off to the side of the main cast. Their bumbling leads to a very low expectation of them, and they are nevertheless somehow holding their own in a very dangerous place. Finally, at the pivotal moment, a degree of savvy, skill, or raw animal cunning reveals that while they may not be slick, they are nonetheless more than capable in their own specific way, and a force to be reckoned with if you're foolish enough to cross them.
Yeah.
And I love this too.
I do too. I hadn't thought about that, but I do love that,
Yeah. Yeah. And I glanced
somebody that you just kind of dismiss, and then
I glanced over this and I was like, I have seen this mentioned on that site, TV Tropes. I don't know if you've seen that, where it lists all the different tropes and it gives names to them. And I think that this one was called Crouching Moron Hidden Hero or something like that. Because people underestimate the character and then they get to show that they're really much smarter or more savvy than you thought.
Right.
He says, why do I love it? In terms of utility, it allows a writer to introduce a set of character traits into the story that might otherwise be left out. Comic relief, it reveals a satisfying twist and a crowd pleaser. And I think that's probably true.
I agree.
And
go ahead.
Let's see his examples for media. He says, where do I start? The Discworld series is almost entirely populated by these to some degree. Jackie Chan made a career of playing characters like this, and it doesn't have to be someone with any special martial arts prowess. It can, maybe my favorite of all time is Columbo, and I was thinking about that. That's a great example.
I was thinking in The Witcher. I haven't read the book, so I don't know. I could be completely wrong about this, but they've sort of alluded to the fact that the I can't remember his name, the guy that is the minstrel that's been in it the whole lot. He is like a bumbling fool. He's very promiscuous, all this stuff, but that he may have some powers or some pull or something that other people don't know about, because he's been given some pretty big roles by The Witcher and to protect people and stuff. And I'm like, that's interesting.
Yeah, I thought of the Scarlet Pimpernel. I think he was one of the first examples of this, is because everybody thinks he's just foolish and a fop, but he's really rescuing people and putting his life on the line. And you don't find out until later that that's really how he is.
Joe writes sci-fi and fantasy mostly under the name Joseph R. Lallo. So. There you go. And then next is Kait Nolan, and her favorite trope is second chance romance. And why do you love it? I think we're all subject to circling around to the what if about the past relationships. We're seldom afforded a do-over in real life. So the notion that we could come back to someone who maybe wasn't quite right for us at the time, or the circumstances didn't quite align, or we just weren't ready for them yet, and get another shot is really appealing.
Very true.
I agree. Yeah, I agree with that.
Everybody has that what if. Yeah. What if things had been different about this person?
Yeah. What's your favorite example? Immediate books, TV, comics, gaming, etc. She said, OMG, I hate trying to choose a favorite. There are so many. I suppose I frequently come back to the comfort reads from Nora Roberts, like Face the Fire or Key of Knowledge. I haven't read, might have read Face the Fire now that I think about it. I can't remember. And she wrote small town contemporary romance as Kait Nolan. So yeah, second chance romance, or, some people, you either love them or you hate them, I think. I don't know. There aren't a ton of people that are kind of in the middle on that one.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. And there's so many subsets of it, right? I mean, there's like second chance romance for seasoned citizens, like I've seen books that are appealing most to an older demographic. Then you have like I don't know if I would almost think of it as like second chance life. You're you're changing your life completely, and that's part of it. That may be more women's fiction, though.
Yeah, that probably is a little more women's fiction. My dog is losing it because somebody's breathing outside the front door in the street. I think that, the Silver Fox, kind of the 40-ish romances, a lot of those do well with that sometime.
And that sounds so much better than Seasoned Citizen, Silver Fox.
I was thinking, gosh.
I was like, what's the other word for that? Obviously, it's not my genre.
It's not Sarah's genre. But yeah, I love a second chance. I think that being able to go back and make it right, or get one more chance, is so appealing to a lot of people. Yeah.
We all want to do over sometimes. So that's the appeal. Yeah. Okay. So Jennifer Hilt is next, and
Jennifer wrote the Trope thesaurus.
Yes.
And she writes fantasy.
So she says she writes fantasy and nonfiction under her own name. And her favorite trope is Amnesia, the one I try to avoid at all cost. And she says she likes it because it works in every genre, and it allows the author to play with the characters' relationships timeline, which I think that is true.
That is true. Yeah.
Yeah. In a way, there are some second chance elements in this, because if you forget, then you kind of get to start over sometimes. And there are some really funny examples in comedy too. Her favorite example of it is Charlene Harris, Dead to the World, book 4.
Oh, best book ever.
That's good.
That's such a good book. I had forgotten about that, but yeah, he does have amnesia. That's such a good book. Yeah, I mean, I have a storyline that I have kicked around about amnesia, but I haven't read enough that I feel like I need to read some more amnesia romance before I can write it, because I'm not exactly sure how you resolve it.
Yeah.
There's a part of me that thinks I'm way too much of a realist to actually write romance sometimes. And that's where it gets me. Like, how do you come out of this and we stay together and everything's fine?
Yeah. Well, a lot of the ones that I'm thinking of with amnesia, the person completely changes. Like, maybe they weren't a great person to begin with. And then once they come back and see from the outside how bad they were, then they begin to change. So like, you've got character growth potential in there.
Yeah, I love that. And then we have Elena Johnson, who we all know Elena Johnson. Super prolific. She writes a little bit of everything, romance, within romance and clean romance. What's your favorite trope? Right now it's Grumpy Sunshine, which is very popular right now. And why do you love it? I love writing a grump, whether male or female. There's just something about the banter they can have with their non-grumpy counterpart. And if the love interest is also a grump, double grump, even better.
It's kind of a twist on the trope right there.
It is a twist on the trope. And, it's so interesting, because I have seen a few where the heroines are grumpy, and the males are non-grumpy. And I think that's so hard to pull off. So I really admire people who can do that, because it's tricky. It's tricky.
It's a little harder. Yeah.
Because people, unfortunately, they hold women to a much higher standard. So, but yeah. And then double grump.
That could be a challenge too. It could be a lot of fun, but it could be, because if you've got to have your readers rooting for your characters. And if they're both grumpy and complaining or picking at each other. So I want to read a double grump.
Yeah, me too.
See how it is done.
Some examples that she had, she said Sabrina and Linus. Yeah. Played by a grumpy Harrison Ford. Yes. She says Heath Ledger in 10 Things I Hate About You, in all his grumpy glory, against the lighter, more sunshiny Julia Stiles. See, I would almost say I see that,
Different.
yeah, flipped. I think she's grumpy in that one, but I do love that movie. But yeah, Linus and Sabrina. Yeah, like I said, she writes contemporary romance and rom-com under Elena Johnson with grumpy cowboys, grumpy billionaires, even grumpy heroines.
That's funny. Yep. So next up we have Anton Eine, and he writes such an interesting character, the Jesus Rockstar series. He says, I must confess, I was a bit surprised and bewildered when getting this question about my favorite tropes. The truth is, I do not have a favorite one, as I never think about tropes. And he says he gets an idea, he builds it, greenhouses it, and grows it organically. And so he said, often I do not know where the story is going, and it makes the journey more exciting. I always aim for unexpected twists and hooks. And so he said, just for fun, I decided to analyze my latest book, Jesus Rockstar, and I realized I could count so many tropes there. Second coming, chosen one, rock star, billionaire womanizer, deprived childhood, traumatic past, emotional scars, friends to lovers, forbidden love, second chance, secret identity, love triangle, etc.
Sounds like my first book. Yeah, I just threw them all in there.
He says, so I do not have a favorite trope, but probably chosen one is the leading theme in my series and the other books. So he said, I assume the most classical example of this trope in literature for over the past 2,000 years, because his series is formally a sequel of the Bible, although I prefer not to call it fanfic yet. Formally, it would be fair, right? So basically, he says chosen one, which is very, very common in sci-fi and fantasy.
Bible, I love it. Chosen one is a big one, especially fantasy or sci-fi or stuff like that. Yeah. Hard to do that in romance.
Yeah, and some people may not really think about tropes like as they're planning or writing the book, but when you go back and look, you can usually find something or many things.
Right, because that's just how we tell stories. That's how we communicate and tell stories. That's how I think it's how we relate to our readers. I think that and how readers relate to and maybe understand what they read and characters that they read, because they see themselves or see their, aspects of their life in the tropes that the characters are in. Lynn Morrison, she is next. She writes cozy mysteries as Lynn Morrison, and her favorite trope is found family, which I will have to say that's right up there with mine. I love found family. Why do you love it? She says, don't get me wrong, I have a great family, but they live far away. I love the idea that you can find assemble a family no matter who you are and where you are. It is always possible to find love and support when you need it most. And I love that. I just, and I think that that's so appealing in literature. That's kind of one of the things I love about fantasy and stuff. A lot of times over the course of a series or something, it will become a found family,
Yeah, me too. It's like my favorite, absolute favorite.
Yeah. Some of the examples of found family it's a very popular trope in cozy mysteries and in urban fantasy. In television, the show My Life is Murder is a great example. Alexa ends up with a found family no matter how hard she pushes them away. And that's true.
And she is an example of a grumpy person.
Yes, she is a grumpy person. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
so that's a good example.
Yeah, that just made me think of, I talk about it all the time, the Kate Daniels series by Ilona Andrews. Kate and Curran. It's urban fantasy, but Kate and Curran, there is a romance there too. And they're both grumps. I mean, they're both grumps.
Next up, we have Adriana Locke. She says, my favorite trope to read and write are different. I just noticed this recently. When I read, I love a good grumpy sunshine in an office setting. There's something so fun about watching the hero shed his grumpiness and fall for his sunshine-filled assistant. I'm such a sucker, especially if he was kind of a jerk to her at the start. When I write, give me all the friends to lovers in a small town. I love writing this because it's what I know. It feels most authentic and genuine, and it makes me feel good to put good out in the world. Yeah. And she says her favorite example of Grumpy Sunshine books are T.L. Swan and Elizabeth O'Rourke books. She says, I'm obsessed with them. They both do this so well and have whole series that focuses on this exact thing.
Yeah, she's right. And Elizabeth does. I actually haven't ever read T.L. Swan, but Elizabeth does do it so well in her rom-coms. They're amazing. And I was thinking the last one we did when we were talking about favorite tropes, which mine is enemies to lovers, I completely forgot one of my favorite enemies to lover books, which is The Hating Game. And this is an example of that. He's very grumpy and she is Miss Sunshine, but he makes her grumpy. I love that too. Heather Day Gilbert. And Heather writes cozy mysteries under her pen name is Heather Day Gilbert. And her favorite trope in cozy mysteries, it's the intrepid yet likable nosy sleuth in a small town. And that's great. Yeah. That's just always so good. And I think you almost have to have one,
Oh yeah. It's hard to be a cozy sleuth and not be nosy.
Yeah.
Because you have no official capacity.
A lot of boundaries. Yeah.
Yeah. You have to be interested in what's going on and a little bit on the nosy side. Yeah.
And why do you love it? Because nosy sleuths aren't afraid to get involved to bring about justice, even if they have to eavesdrop and poke around where they aren't wanted. And because small towns are such perfect settings for cozies, sure, quirky might seem quote unquote to abound because it's much harder to remain anonymous, but in reality, aren't we all quirky in one way or the other? Small towns portrayed realistically can show that you can be supported in times of need because people care about you and are invested in your welfare. So and some of her examples in media are Tommy and Tupperware. Tommy and
Tuppence. Stupens.
The Married Sleuths and Agatha Christie's mysteries. They work together to solve crimes, and their marriage is portrayed with humor yet depth. Yes, they're nosy, and they get involved in things way too big for them to take on alone. But I love how they have to work together to get to the bottom of things, each bringing her own skills into the equation. And for a small town mystery setting, I love the TV series Death in Paradise, which we've talked about before, set in the Caribbean. It truly captures small town living in a realistic and endearing way. And so that's Tommy and Twopence, not Tupperware. So
and it is an excellent series. If you're doing a couple that's a sleuth, especially the first book, how they get involved, and it continues over time, and they actually age.
Oh, really?
Sort of in line with the times that are passing, because like the first one takes place in the 1920s, and the other ones take place after the war, World War II. Yeah. So it's very interesting because they age.
Yeah. What's that one? That TV show, Heart
to Heart.
Heart to Heart. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That was fun. And I just was like, sometimes I'm like, you people do not belong. Get out of their study. You are pilfering around and you have no business there. And then they, solve something and inevitably somebody pulls a gun on them and they have no gun. And, they're just.
It's just hard to be an intrepid, nosy sleuth. Yes. You're going to be in those situations all the time, digging through people's desk. I agree about all those. And Death in Paradise is excellent. Really good series for that. Yeah. Next up is Greta Boris, and she writes paranormal suspense and psychological suspense. And she says, my favorite trope is woman inherits / gets job in / marries the owner of a creepy old house and has to move in. And the reason she likes it, it's so full of mystery and chills. And her favorite is Jane Eyre. And she also loved Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca. And there are new examples, she says, but those are classics. And I think that is, those are old examples. But even now, today, in cozy mystery, that's a huge trope. And also, I'm sure in paranormal suspense and psychological suspense that you inherit something. And there's like that kernel of something that appeals to us about it, like the idea of an unexpected inheritance.
Yes.
It just is like so compelling. We want to read about it. And then if it's a creepy old house, maybe not such a great inheritance.
No, not at all. Not at all. I think about K.F. Breen had her middle age. What is it?
Paranormal women's fiction.
Yes, paranormal women's. She inherits this house. And it cracks me up because it's like, someone you don't know, and they show, and just at the time they need someplace to live, and so they go and live. Anyway, the house is, what's the word I'm looking for? Where it's alive, like everything.
Animate.
Yeah, but
we may edit this later. We'll look it up and add it back in later.
Maybe not. Email us, tell us what it is. But anyway, that's a good one too. Yeah. And that can be used in mystery. It can be used paranormal. It can be used in women's fiction, or anything like that, or romance. But yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So Deanna Roy, I love Deanna Roy. She's so smart. She knows everything. Her favorite trope is second chance. I've written 8 of these suckers involving all 4 of my pen names. You get a second chance, and you get a second chance, and you get a second chance. And she says, mimics Oprah handing out cars. Why do you love it? I think many people have the experience of the one that got away. And when things are hard, it's nice to imagine you could go back and fix it all and get another opportunity to reclaim that love. It also gives the story some depth. So there is a history for the couple. Nobody can call it insta-love, although I do love insta-love too, she says. Some of her favorite examples, The Notebook. I mean, I get why people don't like that book/movie, but dang, the whiplash of love, loss. It's so much like real life. It's intense. You also see a great example of it in When Harry Met Sally. It's so sweet when they get together at the end, because you were there when they botched the first attempt to being together. That's true. And she writes contemporary romance and rom-com under J.J. Knight, and Deanna Roy has books as well. So, yeah, that's true. That's true. Of course, a lot of the ones that got away, or it was a good thing they got away, is all I got to say.
Yes.
And they feel the same way about me.
That would be the twist on this trope if you wrote one and it didn't work out, and then later you were glad. But I don't think that would fit this trope.
No, but it is great in romance. People really,
I do like that she points out that it gives them a history. So like you've already got their history, and you know how it's going to impact what's going on in present day. It gives you a lot more depth, I think.
And I mean, it's kind of got conflict baked in, because they probably didn't break up under the best of circumstances, or, life pulled them apart, or people pulled them apart, so you've already got that conflict baked in.
Yeah. So half your writing is done. Your plotting is well on the way if you do this one. Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah. And it could be that this is just a subplot. Some of these that we went through, they're not the main focus of the story, but you could sprinkle them in, and it would give you a little extra oomph in some of your stories.
Or a lot if you're who is it? And Anton? Oh, Anton. Yeah, Anton. Or a lot if you are Anton.
That's right. Get all the mileage out of the tropes.
Yes. I love that. Yeah. I love that he thought he didn't think about him, and then he's got.
That is true. That is very true.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's true. We all don't realize what we're doing. I think we have a plan, and then subconsciously maybe we're layering these things in, and we don't see it until later, or until somebody points it out, like in a review or something. They'll be like, hey, this is, and that's why I think sometimes reviews are the best place to go to find a quick summary of your book, because they grab like the main themes and tropes and boil it all down.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I just had a friend tell me she just got a 2-star review because the reader found the heroine too whiny because things were hard. And then she also at the same time got a 5-star review because it showed how hard life is, and you can, and even though it's hard, you can still, get through it. And she's like, that's why we don't listen to reviews. And I'm like,
yeah. You got to gird your loins before you go in and read your reviews, and know that not your book isn't for everybody, but anybody can review it. So it doesn't matter if they like it or not. They're going to review it sometimes, and it may not. But we can get good insight that way sometimes too.
That is true. Well, this is fun. I love hearing from our past guests. They're so smart. That's why we had them on in the first place. And so I love hearing their favorite tropes. Did we already do this in our group where we put, what's your favorite trope?
I think we did, but we can do it again.
Yeah, we're going to do it again.
Yeah, because it was around the holidays and people's schedules were crazy. So we'll put that in there, and we'll have all these listed out in the show notes and all the tropes and all the author names. So if you want to do some research and follow up on all these, you can.
Yeah.
And I think that's all we've got for today.
Yeah, I do too. So you guys have a great day.
Yeah, and we will see you next week. Thanks to Alexa Larberg for editing and producing the podcast, and to Adriana Wiggins for doing the admin.
Yep.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Wish I'd Known Then podcast. We hope this episode inspired you, empowered you, and made you laugh a little bit too. If you loved it, tell your friends about it. And if you feel so inclined, leave us a review. We look forward to being with you again next week.